My parents declared, "We're ashamed you exist" at the family dinner when my sister announced she was pregnant with her third child because I had just said I couldn't contribute the monthly $2,000 they demanded to support her influencer lifestyle. My father threw his fork on the plate and yelled that I raised 3 cats instead of giving them grandchildren, while my mother said she'd rather tell her friends she didn't have an older daughter. I'm Rebecca Morrison, 34 years old, and I had spent the last 6 weeks guarding the secret of my own pregnancy like a precious gift, planning the perfect Christmas reveal for the family who had spent 8 months treating me like an ATM machine while worshipping my sister Jade's every move. The dining room went silent after my mother's words. Jade sat there with her hand on her barely visible belly, that practiced influencer smile plastered across her face, her phone positioned to capture every moment of her pregnancy announcement dinner for her 12,000 followers. My father's fork clattered against his plate again, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. $2,400 a month, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. That's what you've been demanding, not $2,000. You added $400 last month for Jade's content creation equipment. I took a sip of my water, letting the numbers hang in the air. I paid $6,000 over 3 months before I realized I was funding designer handbags that she tags on Instagram as blessed and grateful. How dare you? My mother started, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. I pulled out my phone with deliberate slowness. I've been documenting everything. Every Venmo request with captions like, family emergency, and help your sister. Every Instagram post Jade makes showing off purchases that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Every text message where you've called me selfish for questioning why a 28-year-old woman with 3 children needs her older sister to pay for her lifestyle while she lives in your house rent-free. Jade's smile had frozen into something brittle. Becca, you're being dramatic. I'm a content creator. I have expenses. $300 a month? I interrupted, looking directly at her. That's what you make from your influencer career, according to the tax documents you asked me to help you file last April. $300 from 12,000 followers who watch you pretend to be a successful lifestyle guru, while mom and dad enable you and demand I bankroll it. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is about family, Rebecca. Your sister needs support. Your sister needs a job, I said flatly. And parents who stop pretending her third unplanned pregnancy is something to celebrate when she can't support the 2 children she already has. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear Jade's phone still recording, capturing every second of her perfect announcement dinner falling apart. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You're jealous, Jade finally said, her voice shaking. You've always been jealous that I'm the one giving them grandchildren while you're 34 with nothing but cats and a career you use as an excuse to be selfish. Stop, my mother commanded, but she was looking at me, not Jade. Rebecca, I think you should leave. This is your sister's special moment, and you're ruining it with your bitterness. I stood slowly, gathering my purse. My hand shook slightly as I pulled out my phone, but my voice remained calm. You're right, Mom. I should leave, but first I need to make a call. I dialed David's number, putting it on speaker before anyone could stop me. He answered on the first ring. We'd planned for this possibility, though not quite like this. Becca? You okay? I'm fine. I need you to do something for me. I looked directly at my mother as I spoke. Remember those photos I asked you to hold on to? The ones we were saving for Christmas? The pregnancy test photos? His voice was careful, understanding immediately that something had shifted. Yes. Send them to me right now. All of them. Including the doctor's confirmation from 2 weeks ago showing I'm 6 weeks along. The words landed like grenades in the silent dining room. And David? Also send me those screenshots I saved. The messages from my mother to my sister from September. The ones where she said she hoped I never got pregnant because they didn't want to split their attention between grandchildren. I watched my mother's face drain of all color. Yes, those messages. My father had gone very still. Jade's phone had slipped from her fingers onto the table, still recording. Becca, my mother whispered, but I held up my hand again. You told your friends you were ashamed I existed, I said quietly. You said you'd rather not have an older daughter. Over money. Over $2,000 a month that you demanded I send to support Jade's make-believe career while she lives in your house, rent-free with her 3 kids. My phone buzzed with David's messages arriving. Well, Mom, Dad, Jade, I hope you got enough content for Instagram, because I'm about to give our family something worth talking about. I turned to leave, then paused at the dining room doorway. Oh, and Jade, congratulations on pregnancy number 3. I'm sure the father will be just as present as the other two. I smiled, cold and sharp. Or maybe not. But don't worry, I'm sure Mom and Dad will keep demanding I pay for it. The sound of my mother starting to cry followed me down the hallway, but I didn't look back. My phone was already open to my extended family's group chat. 43 members strong, including all the aunts and uncles and cousins who had been asking me for months why I looked so stressed at family gatherings. They were about to find out exactly why. My hands were steady as I drove away from my parents' house, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. David's messages had loaded completely. 6 photos of positive pregnancy tests from different angles, the ultrasound image showing our tiny bean at 6 weeks, and the screenshot that would detonate everything. My mother's text to Jade from 4 months ago. The message read exactly as I remembered. Don't tell Rebecca, but I'm relieved she's not pregnant yet. I can't imagine splitting my attention between your babies and hers. You'll always be my priority, sweetie. Let's hope she stays focused on her career for a few more years. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot 3 blocks from their house and opened the extended family group chat. My cousin Miranda had just posted photos from her daughter's soccer game. Uncle Tom had shared a terrible dad joke. Normal family things, the kind of casual interaction that had always made me feel connected to something larger than my parents' dysfunction. I typed carefully, my marketing background kicking in. Presentation mattered, facts mattered, emotion needed to be controlled, directed, weaponized. Family. I need to share something that happened tonight. I'm going to post screenshots and documents. Please read everything before responding. This isn't about drama. This is about 8 months of financial abuse that ended with my parents telling me they're ashamed I exist. I attached the pregnancy test photos first. Let them see the joy before the ugliness. David and I are 6 weeks pregnant. We've been keeping it secret to announce at Christmas, like my grandmother always did, waiting until the family was together to share big news. But tonight, at dinner, my parents told me I'm a disappointment who should be ashamed for raising cats instead of giving them grandchildren. This was after I told them I couldn't keep sending the $2,400 monthly they've been demanding for 8 months. The typing indicators appeared immediately. 3 people, then 5, then 10. I kept typing before anyone could respond. Here's what you don't know. Since March, Mom and Dad have been demanding I send money to help Jade with expenses. I sent $6,000 over 3 months before I realized the money was funding designer handbags and content creation equipment for her Instagram account that makes $300 a month. Jade lives in their house rent-free with her 2 children. She pays no rent, no utilities, no groceries. I attached screenshots of the Venmo requests, each one carefully saved. Family emergency for $1,900. Jade's car broke down for $2,200. Baby needs formula for $2,000, even though Jade had posted about breastfeeding that same week. My phone started buzzing with incoming messages, but I wasn't done. When I stopped sending money, they told me I was selfish, that I wasn't a real family member, that my career was an excuse to avoid my obligations. Tonight, Jade announced her 3rd pregnancy, 3rd child, 3rd father who isn't involved, and they expected me to celebrate by resuming payments. The next screenshot was the nuclear option. My mother's text to Jade, the one dripping with favoritism and casual cruelty. This is what my mother really thinks about me having children. This is what she told Jade 4 months ago. And tonight, when I said I couldn't fund Jade's lifestyle anymore, they told me they were ashamed I existed. My phone exploded. Calls, texts, messages in the group chat appearing faster than I could read them. Aunt Sharon wrote, "Patricia said that?" Uncle Tom's message was just, "What the hell?" My cousin James, who barely used the group chat, wrote, "This is insane." Then my mother's sister, Aunt Linda, sent a message that made my throat tight. "Rebecca, your grandmother would be horrified. I'm calling your mother right now." I screenshotted the group chat's explosion of messages and sent them to David with a simple text. "It's done." His response was immediate. "Coming home. 20 minutes. I love you." I sat in that parking lot for 15 minutes, watching the family group chat descend into chaos. People were tagging my parents, demanding explanations. Jade had apparently posted a tearful Instagram story about family betrayal that 3 of my cousins had already found and were discussing with barely concealed disgust. "She's crying about betrayal while living rent-free and taking her sister's money?" Cousin Miranda wrote. "Are we seeing the same person?" My phone rang, my father's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. My mother this time. Voicemail. Then Jade's number, which I'd already decided to block. The voicemail notification appeared, but I didn't listen. Instead, I drove home where David was already pulling into our driveway despite saying he'd be 20 minutes. He must have been halfway home when I called from dinner. He wrapped me in his arms the moment I stepped out of my car, and for the first time since my mother's cruel words, I let myself shake. I did it, I whispered against his chest. I actually did it. You were magnificent, he said. My phone's been buzzing nonstop. Your Aunt Linda called me directly. She's apparently at your parents' house right now with Uncle Tom. There's some kind of family emergency meeting happening. I pulled back to look at him. Already? They drove over the moment Linda saw your messages. She told me, and I quote, Patricia has gone too far this time, and Richard needs to remember he has 2 daughters. David's expression was grim. Your cousin James also texted me. He said Jade's been posting Instagram stories, and people are finding them through the family group chat. She's apparently claiming you made everything up. Of course she is. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She's been performing for an audience so long she doesn't know how to stop. Yeah, well, her audience is turning. David showed me his phone. Someone had created a Reddit thread. Influencer lives rent-free. Demands sister fund lifestyle. Gets exposed by family. Jade's Instagram handle was right there in the post, pulled from someone's screenshot. How did that happen so fast? I asked. Your cousin Emma's wife works in social media. She's got friends who follow influencer drama. David scrolled through the Reddit comments. They're already pulling Jade's old posts, comparing what she claimed was hustling with the timeline of your payments. Someone found a post where she thanked her amazing support system, the same week you sent $2,000. My phone rang again. Aunt Linda this time. I answered on speaker. Rebecca, honey, I'm at your parents' house. Your mother is hysterical and your father is claiming you're lying, but I have the screenshots in front of me on the family chat. Linda's voice was steel wrapped in honey. I need you to tell me honestly, is everything you posted true? All of it? Every word, every screenshot, every dollar amount? My voice didn't shake. I have 8 months of bank records, Venmo receipts, and text messages. I can send you everything. Send it to me now, all of it. Your mother is saying you manipulated the screenshots, that you're jealous of Jade's pregnancy. I'm 6 weeks pregnant myself, I interrupted. We have the doctor's confirmation. We've been keeping it quiet to announce at Christmas, because that's what Grandma always did. Remember? Linda's silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Oh, Patricia, she finally said, and her voice held such disappointment it made my chest ache. Rebecca, send me everything. Bank records, medical confirmation, all of it. Your Uncle Tom and I are handling this. After I hung up and started forwarding documents to Linda, David pulled me into the kitchen. He'd ordered Thai food, my favorite, extra spring rolls because pregnancy cravings had already started, and poured me a glass of sparkling water in a wine glass. To you, he said, raising his own glass, for being the strongest person I know. My phone buzzed continuously through dinner as the family group chat devolved into open warfare. People were choosing sides, demanding answers, sharing their own stories of my parents' favoritism over the years. Aunt Linda posted a message that silenced everyone. I've reviewed Rebecca's documentation. 8 months of financial demands totaling over $19,000 requested, $6,000 actually paid. Bank records confirm everything. Patricia's text message to Jade about hoping Rebecca stayed childless is verified as authentic. I just checked with Patricia directly and she admitted sending it. This isn't jealousy or manipulation. This is financial exploitation of one child to enable another's irresponsible choices. The family needs to discuss this seriously. $19,000 requested. I hadn't even calculated the total of their demands, only what I'd actually paid. The number made me feel sick. David squeezed my hand. You okay? They asked me for $19,000 over 8 months. I said slowly. That's almost $2,500 a month average. For what? So Jade could buy designer bags and take aesthetic photos for an Instagram account that makes $300 monthly? While telling you they were ashamed you existed, David added quietly. Don't forget that part. I wouldn't forget. Couldn't forget. The words played on loop in my head. My father's disgust, my mother's cold dismissal, Jade's smug smile before it all fell apart. My phone rang again. This time it was cousin James. Becca, you need to see what's happening online. Jade's Instagram is getting absolutely destroyed right now. By morning, Jade's Instagram had become a crime scene. I sat at my kitchen table with David, both of us scrolling through our phones over coffee, watching my sister's carefully curated life disintegrate in real time. Someone, probably Emma's social media friend, had posted a detailed timeline matching Jade's blessed and grateful designer haul posts with the exact dates of my Venmo payments. The Reddit thread had exploded overnight with 5,000 comments. People were dissecting every aspect of her influencer lifestyle, and the math wasn't pretty. She posted a Gucci belt on March 15th. David read from his phone. You sent $2,000 on March 14th, labeled Family Emergency. But she posted a Louis Vuitton bag on April 22nd. You sent $2,200 on April 20th for Jade's car breaking down. I'm an idiot, I muttered. You're not an idiot. You trusted your family. David's jaw was tight. There's a difference. My phone showed 47 missed calls since last night. I'd blocked my parents and Jade, but other family members kept trying to reach me. Aunt Linda had texted at 6 in the morning. Family meeting today at 2 p.m. Your parents, me, Tom, and anyone else who wants to attend. You don't have to come, but you're welcome. We're handling this. I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed to stay home, protect myself, let the family sort it out without me having to face my parents' accusations again. But David's hand on my shoulder steadied me. If you don't go, they'll claim you're hiding because you lied, he said gently. You have nothing to hide. You have documentation, medical records, bank statements. You have the truth. At 1:30, we drove to Aunt Linda's house where the meeting was being held. Neutral territory. 12 cars were already parked in the driveway and along the street. Apparently, word had spread beyond the immediate family. Uncle Tom opened the door, his usually jovial face grim. Rebecca, David, come in. He hugged me carefully like I might break. Your parents aren't here yet. Linda called them an hour ago and told them to come at 2 exactly. She wanted you settled first. The living room was full. Aunt Sharon, Uncle Mike, cousins Miranda, James, Emma with her wife Kelly, cousin Derek, who I'd barely spoken to in years. All of them turned when I entered, and the expressions ranged from furious to heartbroken. Miranda stood immediately and hugged me. I should have noticed. We all should have noticed you were struggling. I hid it well, I admitted. That's what people do when they're being abused, Kelly said bluntly. She worked as a social worker, and her clinical tone somehow made it easier to hear. Financial abuse is still abuse. Your parents created a systematic pattern of demands, guilt, and manipulation to extract money from you while actively hoping you wouldn't have children so they could focus on Jade's kids. That's textbook exploitation. Aunt Linda emerged from the kitchen with a folder thick with papers. Rebecca, I printed everything you sent me. Bank statements, text messages, social media posts, medical records confirming your pregnancy and the dates. Your mother is going to claim you're lying or exaggerating. I want everyone here to see the truth first. She spread it out on the coffee table like evidence at a trial. The Venmo requests with their manipulative captions. Jade's Instagram posts showing off purchases that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The timeline of demands increasing from $1,500 to $2,400 monthly. My mother's text message about hoping I'd stay childless, blown up and printed in full color. Jesus Christ, Derek muttered, studying the papers. This is insane. At exactly 2 o'clock, my parents' car pulled up. Through the window, I watched my father help my mother out. She moved slowly, dramatically, like she was wounded. Jade emerged from the back seat, phone in hand, already recording. She's filming, Emma said, disgusted. Of course she is. Linda opened the door before they could knock. Patricia, Richard, Jade, come in. Phone's off and away. This is a family meeting, not content. I have a right to defend myself, Jade started. Put the phone away. Linda's voice could have cut glass. Or leave now and accept that this family has heard Rebecca's side and made our judgments accordingly. Jade's face flushed, but she pocketed her phone. They filed in, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. My mother's eyes were red and swollen. My father's expression was rigid with barely controlled anger. Jade looked between them and me with something like panic starting to show through her influencer mask. This is ridiculous, my father said immediately. Rebecca is manipulating all of you. She's always been jealous of Jade. Richard, sit down and be quiet, Uncle Tom interrupted. His tone was conversational, but the authority behind it was unmistakable. Linda and I have reviewed 8 months of bank records, text messages, and social media posts. We've verified every claim Rebecca made. If you want to dispute the facts, you'll need to provide your own documentation. Otherwise, sit down, shut up, and listen. My father's mouth worked silently. He'd never been spoken to that way by his younger brother. Not in 50 years of family dynamics. Linda took over, her voice calm and methodical. March through October, 8 months. $19,400 in total demanded from Rebecca. $6,000 actually paid before she stopped. The requests came via text message and Venmo with captions designed to invoke emotional manipulation. Family emergency, baby needs formula, Jade's struggling. She picked up the printed timeline. Meanwhile, Jade posted 12 designer purchases during the same period, totaling approximately $8,000 retail value. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, all tagged as blessed or manifesting abundance. I have sponsorships, Jade started. You make $300 a month from Instagram, Kelly cut in, showing her phone. Your tax records from last April show exactly $297 in influencer income for the entire year. That's $25 monthly. Rebecca helped you file those taxes, so she knows the real numbers. Want to revise your claim about sponsorships? Jade's face went white. Linda continued, Patricia, you sent Jade a text message on September 12th stating, and I quote, "Don't tell Rebecca, but I'm relieved she's not pregnant yet. I can't imagine splitting my attention between your babies and hers. You'll always be my priority, sweetie. Let's hope she stays focused on her career for a few more years." She held up the printed screenshot. Jade responded with a heart emoji and, "Love you, Mom. Do either of you deny sending and receiving this message?" My mother was crying again, but she shook her head. Last night at dinner, after Rebecca stated she couldn't continue sending money, you told her, in front of multiple witnesses including Jade, that you were ashamed she existed. That you'd rather tell your friends you didn't have an older daughter. You said this because she has cats instead of children. Linda's voice hardened. Except Rebecca is 6 weeks pregnant. She's been pregnant for a month. She and David were planning to announce at Christmas, following your mother's tradition. And you told her you were ashamed she existed. The room was silent except for my mother's crying. My father stared at the floor, his face gray. "I need to understand something," Aunt Sharon said, her voice shaking with anger. "Patricia, you're my sister. I've known you for 60 years. How do you demand $19,000 from one daughter to support another daughter who lives in your house rent-free? How do you tell that daughter you hope she stays childless? How do you say you're ashamed she exists? Make me understand." "Jade needed help," my mother whispered. "She has children. She's building a career. She has an Instagram account with 12,000 followers that makes $25 monthly." Uncle Mike interrupted. "That's not a career, Patricia. That's a hobby. An expensive hobby that you decided Rebecca should pay for. Rebecca has a good job," my father said, finally looking up. "She and David make good money. They can afford to help family. They make $183,000 combined and own a home with a mortgage," Linda said. "I asked Rebecca for their financial details. They have $60,000 in savings they've been building to cover maternity leave and a college fund. That's called being responsible. You demanded they drain their emergency savings to fund Jade's Instagram props. This is all because of some screenshots and bank records?" Jade's voice was shrill. "Becca's turning the whole family against us over money? She's always been selfish." "Stop!" The word came from me, sharp and loud. Everyone turned. I'd been silent since my parents arrived, but I was done listening to the same manipulative patterns. "You want to call me selfish, Jade? Fine. Let's talk about selfish. You're 28 years old. You have 3 children from 3 different fathers. None of them pay child support because you've never filed for it. You told me yourself that going to court was too much drama. You live rent-free in Mom and Dad's house. They pay for your food, your utilities, your children's expenses. And that still wasn't enough." I stood up, pulling out my phone. "I have text messages from you, Jade. Dozens of them. Becca, can you send money for diapers? Becca, the kids need new clothes. Becca, I need to upgrade my ring light for better content." Every single request went through you directly, and when I'd hesitate, you'd send Mom and Dad to pressure me. You weaponized our parents against me. "That's not..." Jade tried, but I kept going. "Last month, you asked me for $400 for content creation equipment. I looked it up after I sent the money. You bought a designer phone case and a portable charger. $400 for a phone case, Jade. And when I asked why you needed that for content creation, you blocked me for 3 days until Mom called to tell me I was being judgmental." The silence was thick enough to choke on. Jade's face had gone from white to splotchy red. "You are 28 years old with 3 children. I repeated, my voice steady now. "I am 34 years old, 6 weeks pregnant, and I almost didn't tell my husband we were having financial problems because I was so ashamed that I was sending thousands of dollars to my family while we were trying to save for a baby. I almost let you steal my marriage's security because I was terrified of being called selfish." "This is exactly why I didn't want you to have kids," my mother said suddenly, her voice bitter through tears. "You're vindictive. You hold grudges. You'd be a terrible mother." "Patricia, Linda's voice cracked like a whip. If you finish that sentence, I will personally ensure you never see any grandchildren, Rebecca's or Jade's. Do you understand me? My mother clamped her mouth shut, but the damage was done. Her mask had slipped completely, and everyone in the room had seen the cruelty underneath. Uncle Tom stood up. Here's what's going to happen. Rebecca and David are no longer obligated to send a single dollar to anyone in this family. Richard, Patricia, if you pressure them again, you'll answer to me personally. Jade, you're an adult with children. Figure out your life, get a real job, file for child support, or move into your own place and support yourself. This gravy train is over. You can't tell me what to do, Jade said, but her voice wavered. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what's happening. Tom's expression was granite. This family just watched you take $6,000 from your pregnant sister while posting designer bags online. Your Instagram is already being torn apart by strangers. Do you really want to see what happens when your own family stops protecting you? I didn't take anything, Jade insisted. She sent it willingly. Under duress, after manipulation, using emotional blackmail, Kelly said. I work with financial abuse victims. What your parents and you did to Rebecca meets every clinical definition. You can play word games all you want, but the pattern is documented and clear. My father stood abruptly. We're leaving. Patricia, Jade, get your things. Richard, Linda started. No, my daughters and I are leaving. If this family wants to side with Rebecca's manipulation and lies, fine. But we don't have to stay here and be attacked. Dad, I said quietly. He stopped at the door. I'm 6 weeks pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather to my child. And you just chose to walk out rather than acknowledge you did anything wrong. He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he opened the door and walked out. My mother followed without looking back. Jade paused at the threshold, her phone already in her hand, expression calculating. This isn't over, Becca, she said. Yes, it is, I replied. It's completely over. After they left, the room exhaled collectively. Aunt Linda hugged me while I shook silently, all the fear and anger finally breaking through. You did the right thing, she whispered. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. But I wasn't done yet. The evidence was out there, documented and verified. But I needed them to face real consequences, not just family disappointment. I needed the world to see who they really were. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. The Instagram implosion accelerated faster than anyone expected. By Monday morning, 3 days after the family meeting, Jade's follower count had dropped from 12,000 to 8,000. Her posts were flooded with comments. Who paid for that bag? Scammer. Your sister deserves better. She'd tried to fight back with a tearful Instagram story about family betrayal and jealous siblings, but it backfired spectacularly when someone found her public Venmo profile. Every transaction I'd sent was visible with those manipulative captions. Family emergency, baby formula, struggling mom needs help. The same person cross-referenced the dates with her Instagram posts. The timeline didn't lie. But I wasn't satisfied with social media justice. I wanted something permanent, something that would protect other people from their manipulation. So I made a call to someone I'd been avoiding for years, my former college roommate Jennifer, who was now a financial abuse victims advocate and ran a nonprofit. Rebecca Morrison, Jennifer said when she answered, warmth in her voice. I haven't heard from you in 3 years. What's going on? I told her everything. The 8 months of demands, the $6,000 paid, my parents' favoritism, the cruel text messages, the public shaming at dinner. When I finished, there was a long silence. Do you have documentation? Jennifer asked, her tone shifting to professional. Every text message, every Venmo transaction, every bank record, 8 months of evidence. Send it all to me, every single piece. I want to feature your story in our next awareness campaign, anonymously if you prefer, but with your permission to use the actual documentation. Not anonymously, I said. David looked up from his coffee, surprised. I want my name attached. I want other people who are being financially manipulated by family to know it's okay to say no, that it's not betrayal to protect yourself. Jennifer's approval was audible. Then let's make this count. On Wednesday, exactly 1 week after the dinner that changed everything, Jennifer's nonprofit posted a detailed case study on financial family abuse. My full name was attached, with my permission. Every screenshot, every bank record, every manipulative text message was laid out in a professional, clinical presentation that made it impossible to dismiss as family drama. The post went viral within hours, shared 15,000 times by lunch, 30,000 by dinner. News outlets picked it up. A local reporter from the Columbus Dispatch called requesting an interview. "I want to speak publicly about financial abuse in families," I told David that evening. "Not for revenge, for visibility, so people know what the warning signs look like." The interview published on Friday. The reporter had done her homework. She'd contacted Aunt Linda for verification, reviewed public records of Jade's LLC registration for her influencer business that showed zero income filings, and even found 2 of Jade's children's fathers who confirmed they'd offered child support. But Jade had never filed the paperwork because she didn't want government involvement. The article painted a devastating picture. A successful young professional systematically exploited by her own family to fund her sister's fake lifestyle while being told she was selfish for having boundaries. My phone rang constantly. Interview requests, podcasts, advocacy groups wanting me to speak. But the call that mattered came on Saturday morning from an unknown number. "Miss Morrison? This is Detective Andrea Walsh from the Columbus Police Financial Crimes Division. I've been forwarded your case by the Domestic Abuse Advocacy Network. I'd like to discuss whether your family's actions constitute criminal coercion or theft by deception." David's hand found mine as I processed this. "You think what they did was criminal?" "I think it's worth investigating," Detective Walsh said carefully. "Financial exploitation of family members exists in a gray area legally, but the pattern you've documented, demands, emotional manipulation, threats of family exclusion, misrepresentation of how funds would be used, that moves toward criminal territory. I'd like to review your evidence officially." I met with Detective Walsh on Tuesday. She spent 3 hours reviewing everything, taking notes, asking detailed questions about each transaction and the circumstances surrounding it. "Your sister's Venmo captions are the key," she explained. "Baby needs formula when the baby was breastfed. That's misrepresentation. Car broke down when the money went to a designer purchase. That's deceptive. Your parents threatening family exclusion if you didn't pay. That's coercion. Individually, these might be dismissed as family conflict. Together, they form a pattern. What happens now?" I asked. "I forward this to the prosecutor's office with a recommendation for further investigation. It's not guaranteed they'll file charges. Family financial crimes are complicated, but between your documentation and the public attention this case has received, there's pressure to take it seriously." I walked out of the police station feeling lighter than I had in months. Whether charges were filed or not, the truth was documented officially. My family's actions were being examined by law enforcement. That felt like vindication. That evening, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but David nodded. We'd discussed this possibility. "Rebecca, you need to stop this," my mother said, her voice tight. "The police called your father today. You're trying to have us arrested? Over a family disagreement? Over $19,000 in demands and $6,000 in money I sent under false pretenses," I corrected. "Over months of manipulation and emotional abuse? Over you telling Jade you hoped I'd stay childless? Over you saying you were ashamed I existed? That's not a disagreement, Mom. That's systematic exploitation. We're your parents. We needed help. You own your house outright. Dad has a pension. You work part-time. Your combined income is $5,000 monthly with no mortgage. I'd done the math repeatedly. You don't need help. You chose to enable Jade's irresponsibility and demanded I fund it. Jade is struggling. Jade is 28 years old and needs to get a job," I interrupted. "She has 3 children she can't support. That's not struggling, Mom. That's being irresponsible. And you enabling her while exploiting me doesn't help anyone." My mother's voice turned cold. "If you go through with this police investigation, you'll never see your father or sister again. We'll cut you out completely." The threat landed like a pebble in an ocean. I felt nothing but relief. "Okay," I said simply. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and blocked the number. David pulled me close as I finally let myself cry. Not from sadness, but from the release of a burden I'd carried for so long, I'd forgotten what freedom felt like. The prosecutor's office called the following week. They weren't filing criminal charges. The bar for family financial crimes was too high without proof of explicit threats or fraud, but they were sending a formal cease and desist letter to my parents and Jade, warning them that any further contact with me requesting money would be treated as harassment and could result in restraining orders. It wasn't the dramatic courtroom confrontation part of me had wanted, but it was official. It was documented. and it was over. The cease and desist letter arrived at my parents' house on a Tuesday. I know because Jade posted an Instagram story about it at 3 in the afternoon. A photo of the official document with the caption, "When your sister weaponizes the legal system against her own family. Family betrayal in bar, heartbroken." She deleted it within an hour after someone reported it to the prosecutor's office for violating the cease and desist terms, but not before 17 people had screenshotted it and shared it across social media. The comments were brutal. "You literally scammed your pregnant sister out of thousands, and you're crying about being the victim?" The legal system is working exactly as intended, protecting people from financial abusers. "Ma'am, this is not the flex you think it is." Kelly texted me the screenshots with a single message. "She's imploding." Jade's Instagram following dropped below 5,000 by the end of that week. Brand sponsorships, the few small ones she actually had, dropped her after the scandal. The aesthetic lifestyle she'd built her entire identity around was crumbling publicly while she still lived in my parents' spare bedroom with 3 children and 0 income. But the real fall came from an unexpected direction. On Thursday evening, 2 weeks after the cease and desist letter, Aunt Linda called. "Rebecca, you need to see what's happening at your parents' house. Can you come to the coffee shop near them? I don't want you going there directly, but you should see this." David and I drove over, parking where Linda had indicated. From there, we could see my parents' driveway. A moving truck was parked in front. Jade was loading boxes while my mother supervised, her face drawn and aged. "What's happening?" I asked Linda as she joined us at our car. "Your parents finally gave Jade an ultimatum. Get a job and start contributing to household expenses or move out." Linda's expression was grim satisfaction. "Richard's pension is being garnished now. Apparently they had credit card debt we didn't know about. $15,000 they'd run up covering Jade's expenses and lifestyle. They can't afford to support her anymore." "Where is she going?" David asked. One of the children's fathers apparently agreed to let her stay with him temporarily, the one from kid number 2. "She'll have to get a real job now. He told her if she wants to live there, she needs to contribute to rent and utilities." I watched my sister struggle with a heavy box, her phone tucked awkwardly under her chin as she tried to film herself moving out. Still performing, even now. Still pretending her life was content. "Your parents are pariahs in their social circle now," Linda continued. "After the newspaper article and the nonprofit case study, people started asking questions. Patricia's been uninvited from her book club and the church charity committee. Richard's been getting cold shoulders at the VFW. People don't want to be associated with what they did to you." "Good," I said, and meant it. No guilt, no remorse. They'd earned every ounce of social exclusion. Jade's Instagram account was deleted entirely 3 days later. Whether she chose to delete it or Instagram removed it for violations, I never found out. Her identity as an influencer was gone. According to Emma's wife, Kelly, who tracked these things professionally, Jade had started working at a retail store in the mall. 40 hours a week at $14 an hour, her first real job in 5 years. My parents' house went dark after that. No more Sunday dinners, no more family gatherings there. The center of our family had shifted to Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom's house, and my parents weren't invited. I ran into my father once, accidentally, at the grocery store 6 weeks after everything exploded. He was alone, looking older than his 62 years, his cart containing frozen dinners and cheap beer. He saw me and froze. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, might say something that acknowledged what they'd done. Instead, he looked at my visible pregnancy. I was 14 weeks now, showing clearly, and his face hardened. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You destroyed your sister's life. You destroyed your mother's reputation. Over money. Over $19,000 you demanded while telling Jade you hoped I'd never get pregnant," I corrected quietly. "Over systematic manipulation and emotional abuse. Over choosing to enable Jade's irresponsibility instead of parenting her." "She's your sister. You were supposed to help her." "She's your daughter. You were supposed to teach her to be independent." I moved my cart around him. "I hope the money was worth losing me, Dad, because you made your choice very clear." I walked away without looking back. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. There was no satisfaction in his misery, but there was no guilt either. Just a clean, clear sense of closure. The prosecutor's office called again in December, 3 months after the initial investigation. Detective Walsh wanted me to know that while they hadn't filed criminal charges, the cease and desist documentation had been flagged in the system. If my parents or Jade ever attempted similar financial manipulation with anyone else, there was now an official record that could support future victims. You created a paper trail that might protect someone else down the line, she explained. That matters, Miss Morrison. More than you might realize. Christmas arrived without the family gathering I'd grown up with. Instead, David and I hosted a small celebration at our house. Aunt Linda, Uncle Tom, cousins Miranda and James with their families, Emma and Kelly. 12 people who had stood by me, who had believed me, who had held my parents accountable. We announced the baby's gender, a girl, and everyone cried happy tears. Linda gave me my grandmother's christening gown, carefully preserved for 40 years. Your mother was supposed to have this for Jade's children, Linda explained. But Patricia gave it to Goodwill last month in a fit of rage after the church committee dropped her. I bought it back the same day. It belongs to you now, and to your daughter. I held the delicate fabric and thought about my grandmother who had always made Christmas special, who had believed in tradition and family but also in standing up for yourself. She would have been horrified by what my parents did, but she would have been proud of how I handled it. My mother tried one final time to reach out 3 days before Christmas. She sent a letter, not an email or text she could be accused of violating the cease and desist with, but an actual handwritten letter delivered through regular mail. Rebecca, I don't understand why you're doing this to us. We're your parents. We love you. All we asked was for you to help your sister, and you've turned it into this enormous drama that's destroyed our family. Your father's health is suffering from the stress. Jade is working retail and struggling to support her children. And you're pregnant and happy, celebrating with the family members who turned against us. I hope you're satisfied. I hope this is what you wanted, to tear apart the people who raised you. Maybe when your daughter is born, you'll understand what it means to sacrifice for your children and expect them to sacrifice for each other. I pray you never experience the pain of having a child who betrays you the way you've betrayed us. I don't expect you to respond to this. I know you've made your choice, but I needed you to know that what you've done has consequences. And those consequences are destroying the people who love you. Mom, I read it aloud to David. Then I read it again, analyzing each sentence with the same marketing precision I used at work. She doesn't apologize once, I said. Not a single sentence acknowledges that demanding $19,000 might have been wrong, or that telling Jade she hoped I'd stay childless was cruel, or that saying she was ashamed I existed was devastating. It's all blame, David agreed. You destroyed the family. You created drama. You betrayed them. Zero accountability. I took the letter to our fireplace. We'd installed it last year, long before any of this happened, and held it over the flames. She's right about one thing, I said. What I did has consequences. Jade has to work a real job now. My parents lost their social standing. They can't manipulate anyone else financially because there's an official record. Those are exactly the consequences I wanted. I dropped the letter into the fire and watched it curl and blacken. David's arm came around my shoulders as we watched it burn. Any regrets? He asked quietly. None, I said. Not a single one. 5 months later, I gave birth to Eleanor Patricia Morrison, Eleanor for David's grandmother, Patricia for the mother who would never meet her. The middle name wasn't forgiveness. It was a reminder that I had risen above the cruelty that name had come to represent. Aunt Linda was in the delivery room with David, coaching me through contractions and crying when Eleanor arrived screaming and perfect. Uncle Tom brought balloons and a teddy bear my grandmother had given him when he was born, preserved carefully for 60 years. She would have loved this baby, Linda whispered, holding Eleanor for the first time. And she would have been so proud of you for protecting her. My parents didn't call, didn't send a card, didn't acknowledge their first granddaughter's existence. I'd expected nothing else, but it still created a small, hollow space where family traditions should have been. Jade's Instagram remained deleted. According to Emma's professional tracking, my sister was still working retail, still living with child number 2's father, still struggling with the reality that aesthetic photos didn't pay bills. Her 3 children were in daycare now. She'd finally filed for child support from all 3 fathers and was using it responsibly, or so I'd heard through the family grapevine. Part of me wondered if hitting rock bottom had finally forced her to grow up, but I'd learned the hard way that wondering about my sister's life was a trap I didn't need to fall into anymore. 6 weeks after Eleanor's birth, while I was on maternity leave, Jennifer's nonprofit asked me to speak at their annual fundraising gala. The topic? Financial abuse in families, recognizing the patterns and finding the courage to say no. David watched Eleanor while I stood on that stage in front of 300 people and told my story. not with anger or bitterness, but with clinical precision. The timeline of demands, the manipulation tactics, the cruel text messages designed to make me question my own worth, the moment I finally said no, and the systematic destruction that followed. The hardest part wasn't losing the money, I said to the silent audience. It was accepting that the people who raised me saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. It was realizing that my own mother hoped I would stay childless so she could focus on my sister's children. It was understanding that family had become a weapon they used against me instead of a bond that protected me. I showed the slides Jennifer had prepared, screenshots of the Venmo requests, the Instagram posts showing designer purchases, the timeline that proved the connection. The audience gasped audibly at several reveals. I'm sharing this not for revenge, but for recognition. If you're reading this, and you've been sending money to family members who make you feel guilty for having boundaries, you're not selfish. You're being exploited. If your parents tell you that helping your siblings is more important than your own financial security, that's manipulation, not love. If anyone tells you that real family doesn't keep score while simultaneously keeping very detailed score of what you owe them, that's abuse. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, 17 people approached me with their own stories of family financial exploitation. 2 were crying. 1 handed me a note with her sister's Venmo requests. The same manipulative captions, the same guilt tactics, the same patterns I'd experienced. I thought I was the only one, she whispered. I thought I was crazy for being angry about it. You're not crazy, I told her. And you're not alone. The speech was recorded and posted on YouTube. It went viral within days. 200,000 views, then 500,000, then over 1 million. Comments flooded in from people sharing their own experiences, thanking me for giving them permission to set boundaries, celebrating that someone had finally named what they'd been experiencing. One comment in particular stopped me cold. My daughter sent me this video. I've been demanding money from her for years to help her brother. I told myself it was just family helping family. After watching this, I realized I've been abusing her financially and emotionally. I called her today to apologize and tell her the demands stop now. Thank you for opening my eyes. That comment had 3,000 likes. Below it, hundreds of replies from other parents acknowledging similar patterns, thanking the original commenter for their courage to change. Not every story ended in exploitation. Some families could hear the truth and choose differently, but mine couldn't. And I'd made peace with that. Eleanor was 3 months old when I received a certified letter from my parents' attorney. For one surreal moment, I thought they might be suing me, some final desperate attempt at control. Instead, the letter informed me that I'd been removed from their will entirely. Everything would go to Jade and her children. David found me in the nursery, staring at the letter while Eleanor slept peacefully in her crib. They disinherited me, I said, showing him the document. Made it official and legal. They wanted me to know. How do you feel about that? He asked carefully. I looked at my daughter, at the life we'd built, at the family we'd chosen and who had chosen us in return. The inheritance I'd lost was nothing compared to what I'd gained. My self-respect, my freedom, my daughter's future unburdened by toxic manipulation. Relieved, I said honestly. Now there's nothing left they can hold over me. No future inheritance to dangle, no possibility of reconciliation I'd have to navigate, no complicated estate drama when they die. It's clean and clear and final. You're sure? Completely sure. I picked up Eleanor, her small, warm weight solid and real in my arms. They gave me one final gift, absolute proof that I was right to cut them off. They chose Jade and their pride over ever knowing their granddaughter. That's not a loss for me, David. That's a loss for them. The local newspaper wanted to do a follow-up article about the viral speech. I agreed, but only if they included resources for financial abuse victims and the nonprofit's contact information. The reporter asked the question everyone had been dancing around. Do you think your parents will ever reach out to apologize and meet their granddaughter? No, I said simply. And I don't want them to. An apology now would just be manipulation. Another attempt to regain access to me as a resource. Real change requires acknowledging what they did was wrong, and they've spent 9 months doubling down on blaming me instead. I don't need their apology or their presence in Eleanor's life. What about your sister? Do you think there's any possibility of reconciliation there? I thought about Jade working retail, finally experiencing real consequences, maybe finally growing up. If Jade genuinely changes, if she gets therapy, takes responsibility, rebuilds her life without exploiting others, then maybe someday we could have a distant, cordial relationship. But that would require her acknowledging she participated in financially abusing me for 8 months. That would require her to stop seeing herself as the victim of my jealousy and start seeing herself as an adult who made destructive choices. I'm not holding my breath. And if your parents or sister showed up at your door tomorrow, genuinely apologetic, I'd direct them to family therapy with a mediator specializing in financial abuse. I wouldn't see them alone, wouldn't let them meet Eleanor unsupervised, wouldn't give them access to my life until they demonstrated sustained change over time. I met the reporter's eyes steadily. But again, I'm not expecting that. And I've built a good life without waiting for it. The article published on the 1-year anniversary of the dinner that changed everything. The headline read, "From Financial Abuse to Freedom, One Woman's Journey to Protecting Herself and Her Daughter." That evening, David and I sat on our back porch while Eleanor played on a blanket between us, grabbing at the spring sunshine filtering through the trees. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. Supportive comments, interview requests, people sharing their own stories. One message stood out, from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Richard, your father." I read the article. "I want you to know that I don't agree with anything you've said or done, but I hope your daughter turns out better than you did. A daughter who respects her family." I showed it to David without comment. "Are you going to respond?" he asked. "No." I deleted the message and blocked the number. He's still trying to manipulate me, still trying to make me feel guilty. That's not a father reaching out. That's an abuser testing to see if he still has power. You're really okay with them never being part of Eleanor's life? I looked at my daughter, watching her discover her own toes with absolute fascination. My parents demanded $19,000 from me over 8 months. They told my sister they hoped I'd stay childless. They called me a disappointment when I set boundaries. They said they were ashamed I existed. And when I documented it all, when I protected myself legally, when I spoke publicly to help other people recognize financial abuse, they disinherited me and sent messages about how I'm a terrible daughter. I picked up Eleanor, holding her close. Those are not people I want teaching my daughter what family means. Those are not people I want anywhere near her. I'm completely okay with them never meeting her because she deserves better than conditional love based on financial compliance. She really does, David agreed, wrapping his arms around both of us. 1 year became 2. Eleanor learned to walk, then talk, then ask questions about her family. We showed her photos of Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom, of cousins Miranda and James and their kids. We taught her about her great-grandmother who had believed in both tradition and independence. We didn't show her photos of my parents or talk about the grandparents she'd never met. When she got old enough to ask why some kids had 4 grandparents and she only had David's parents, we'd tell her an age-appropriate version of the truth. Sometimes families aren't safe. And it's okay to build new families with people who treat us well. My parents never reached out again after that one manipulative text. Jade sent a brief message when Eleanor turned 1. "Congratulations on your daughter's first birthday." But nothing else. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a bare minimum gesture that felt more like checking a box than genuine connection. I didn't respond. I'd learned that lesson well. People who want real reconciliation do the work. They don't send brief messages expecting the person they hurt to do all the emotional labor of rebuilding. Jennifer's nonprofit grew substantially after my story went viral. They received funding for 3 new programs targeting family financial abuse, including a legal aid fund for victims who needed help getting cease and desist orders or restraining orders against family members. They named the fund after my grandmother, the Lillian Collins Legal Protection Fund. "She would have loved this," Aunt Linda said at the dedication ceremony. "Your grandmother always said the best way to honor someone is to help other people in their name." I thought about that often, how my grandmother's legacy had transformed from a hope that I'd stay financially independent into a literal legal fund protecting other people from the same abuse I'd experienced. The cruelty my parents had shown me had been transformed into something that helped hundreds of people set boundaries and protect themselves. That felt like the truest justice. Not revenge, not making them suffer, though they had suffered social consequences they'd earned, but transforming my pain into purpose that protected others. On the 2-year anniversary of that dinner, David surprised me with something he'd been working on secretly, a framed collage of photos. Eleanor's first smile, our chosen family at Christmas, me speaking at the nonprofit gala, newspaper headlines about financial abuse awareness, and at the center, the ultrasound photo we'd been planning to reveal at Christmas before everything exploded. This is your real story, he said as I cried looking at it. Not what they did to you, but what you built despite them. You protected yourself, you protected our daughter, and you helped hundreds of other people protect themselves. That's who you are, Becca. That's your legacy. I hung it in our bedroom where I'd see it every morning, a reminder that I'd faced the worst my family could do to me, and not only survived, but thrived. That I'd chosen love and boundaries and self-respect over obligation and guilt and conditional approval. My parents had told me they were ashamed I existed, but I'd built a life I was proud of, filled with people who valued me, work that mattered, a daughter who would grow up knowing that family means safety, not exploitation. And somewhere in their mortgage-free house with their disinherited daughter and their struggling golden child, my parents were learning that cruelty has consequences that last far longer than the momentary satisfaction of control. Eleanor would never know her maternal grandparents. She'd never attend Sunday dinners at their house or hear their version of family history, but she'd know something more important, that her mother had chosen her safety over appeasing abusers. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you, even when they're family. That legacy, the legacy of boundaries and self-respect and transforming pain into purpose, was worth more than any inheritance they could have left me. I'd lost my family of origin, but I'd gained something far more valuable. The knowledge that I could protect myself and my child, that I could set boundaries without guilt, that I could build a chosen family who loved me without conditions. My parents had been right about one thing. What I did had consequences. The consequences were that I was free, my daughter was safe, and hundreds of other people had found the courage to protect themselves from family financial abuse. Those were exactly the consequences I'd wanted, and I had zero regrets.